Hi guys, Dr. D here. I wanted to give a response to a question that someone had asked me to do as part of a reaction to a YouTube video. So this will be one of my first reaction vids here. I was asked to explain my take on it. It says, my friend says here, as you have a doctorate in biblical studies, I would like to understand what happened in 1913 in America and the Bible that normalized, Zionism. Well, first, I want to look at what is Zion. And the way that we know what Zion is comes from the book of Chronicles. In 1 Chronicles 11, 4 and 5, it says here, I recognize that not everyone will be able to read, it's a little small here, but it says, and David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jebus, where the Jebusites were, the inhabitants of the land. But the inhabitants of Jebus said to David, you shall not come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David. So Zion is Jerusalem. Well, what about Zionism? Well, Zionism, it's the creation of the state of Israel. According to Compton's Encyclopedia, this occurred in 1948 as a homeland for Jews the world over, and it was a culmination of decades of effort. And an example of it was that from about 1500 through the early 18th century, there were sporadic attempts of a lot of Jewish personalities to encourage resettlement in Palestine. So this is talking about the Palestinian resettlement. All right, so with that, I'm going to put on my headphones and we'll see what this video has to say.
If you remember when Bibles were like this in homes and in churches, every church had a Bible like this. Every Christian family had a Bible like this, and they put their family genealogy, the weddings, baptisms, and burials. It was all put inside the Bible, and you passed it down generation to generation. This particular Bible was published in 1905. Now, the reason I brought it out is that I want to show a map that's in this Bible. Now, mind you, the Scofield Bible was not published until 1913.
Right.
And I have in my office an original 1913 Scofield, which was the introduction of the Zionist Masonic heresies about a future state of Israel and separating the church from Israel and all that rapture stuff. That's where it came from. It was a Masonic Zionist heresy that was introduced into the American churches in 1913. This is a 1905 Bible.
Pre-Scofield.
Pre-Scofield, with no Scofield notes in it. So, you open it up, and this is on page 13. I mean, this thing's big. I want to show you. Here is a map of the Holy Land.
Can't tell, really.
And it says,
a lot of colors.
What?
Oh, Palestine of the Holy Land.
They misspelled Israel.
No.
Palestine.
Palestine.
Huh.
And all these Christian Zionists that tell me, Rick, there's never been a Palestine.
All right, so here's a still.
There it is.
Let's zoom in and show you here.
Yeah. So, yeah, you hear these people like John Hagee, there's never been a Palestine. Well, look at this Bible map from 1905.
And most Bibles from then had a map of Palestine.
And Palestine is in the Bible itself, in the Old Testament. So we're showing you this just because I'm trying to break through the propaganda, the confusion, the lies that the Zionists have implanted in millions of minds of Christians in America, and told them there's never been a place called Palestine.
But I have a map, Rick.
Right there it is. So, with that in mind, do you know who lived in Palestine?
Palestinians?
Palestinians.
I got that one right.
Palestinians. And Palestinians were Jewish, Christian,
and Muslim. Right. They weren't a particular faith. They were citizens of a particular country.
Palestine. They were all Palestinians.
Yes.
Jesus was a Palestinian.
And I'm thinking part of this is also...
Look at this. Okay.
That the...
So Israel has never meant a political country. It's always meant the people of God.
Yes.
The called out ecclesia, the people of God. That's what Israel means. It's not a political country. With that in mind, we're going to show you some of the scenes of the violence that's taking place in Palestine this week, because here's what's happened. Following the 1917 Jewish Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, where the Jewish Bolsheviks went in and slaughtered the Romanov families in a satanic ritual, imposed communism on Russia, killed hundreds of thousands, literally millions of Christians, hundreds of thousands of Christian Orthodox pastors, and burned their churches, and just a horrible attack on the Russian church in 1917 and afterwards.
Okay. That seems to be the end of the video. It stopped rather abruptly. What I believe the intent here, I believe the intent was to try to disprove an idea that perhaps Palestine did not exist. I'm not sure where that idea came from. I hadn't heard the rumor that there was never a Palestine. And during the time that Jesus lived, and I think it's interesting that they said Jesus lived in Palestine. That's interesting whenever you look at it from the aspect that I said, well, what if it's talking about a government? Well, during the time of Jesus, the people who were in control, and that's kind of a loose term, the overall government, the master government, was at the time the Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire had many different territories involved, and they had separated all of these territories into different city-states. Whenever they were trying to figure out who to turn over Jesus to, because of the thought that the Jews had brought about, that Jesus was trying to build a government uprising as someone who claimed to be their king and who claimed to be God, they really concentrated on the fact that Jesus was claiming to be king. And that was where they were trying to say, this is a revolutionary who's trying to revolt against the Roman Empire. At the time that Jesus was in Jerusalem, and they were preparing to, or Zion, and preparing to destroy his life, there was conversation about who has jurisdiction over this man. And it was determined that it was a gentleman from the land that Jesus was born. Jesus was not born in Jerusalem. Jesus was actually born in Bethlehem, and he lived in Galilee. So the discussion was, who are we going to turn this gentleman over to? And it was the person of the local area. It is very sad if the Zionists are trying to say that there was no Palestine. And what else was interesting about this gentleman's discussion was that he was talking very adamantly about how the Jewish people of the early 1900s were quite violent and against anyone who wasn't a Jew. We know they suffered greatly, the Jewish people did, in years that followed. I'm not going to say rightfully so, my opinion is not important there, but what was the end of that really came about at the end of World War II, and at the end of World War II, from what we read in Compton's, that's around that time is whenever people brought the Jews together world over and gave them land in Palestine. It sounds like there is discussion over whether Palestine was the right place to put the Jewish people, and it is believed that that is the right place because that is how the prophecies could be fulfilled. Early on with that Zionism movement we saw in the 1500s and other times that were mentioned in Compton's, where people had tried to bring the Jewish people back to Jerusalem, the city of David, Zion. What's pretty intense right now is whenever I look at a map, and with all the wars and everything that constantly go on, and knowing people from the area, you want to look at a map of today. But what's interesting is that it is an area where Israel is an area that encompasses so much more than the city of David. And as far as the city of David, Jerusalem is concerned, the Jewish people have given a lot of that back. So as a lot of countries have stepped in and said, hey, here's your land, we want you to have this land, well, in peace treaties, the city of David, Zion, is actually the area that they're giving up, whereas they keep settling in areas that are already claimed as Palestine, and we have, it sounds like, more Jewish settlers settling in areas of Palestine than we actually have Palestinians settling in areas that are claimed to be Israel. However, my stance on it is I would love for a third government to take over. City of David is not Palestine. The city of David is not Israel. The city of David is a new government. And in Revelation, we find out that's actually going to happen. A third government is going to take over, and we're going to have a new Jerusalem. And who's the leader of that? Well, it is the God of Abraham that is the overall leader of that. So, we'll have hundreds of years of strife between the Israelites and the Palestinians, the Jewish people and the Arab people. But that's my take on it. That is my take, and we'll wait for that third government led by God to control the whole area.